Imagine sitting on the floor of a dark room, alone and in pain. This scene portrays what suffering feels like. The moment you find the courage to get up and look for the light switch, you are in surrender. When you turn on the light, you are filled with the light of grace. From here, you will find the door that leads you out of the dark room and back into self love, and ultimately into your divinely inspired life.
Hello, my name is Jay Walter, and this is Rebuilding. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "A mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions." So let's stretch our minds, find answers to problems, overcome fears, and rebuild our first kingdom. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rebuilding with Jay Walter. Got another great show. It's been a while since I've done any recording. Mostly this COVID virus has kind of kept me out of the booth for some reason, and so I'm trying to get in and talking to more people. I hope everybody out there is staying safe and staying well, and that this show today will help maybe lighten up a dark recess in your mind and help you move forward throughout the rest of this year. We've got a wonderful guest. Her name is Robin Clare. And Robin, only after revealing her deepest dark secret, was able to become her most authentic spiritual self. Struggling with food addiction and bulimia for decades, she finally dug deep into current and past lives to heal wounds that had blocked success and fed her active addiction. Now in recovery, Robin is living her soul mission as a speaker and life writing coach. As an author, she documented her extraordinary spiritual journey in the highly acclaimed Messiah Within, followed by Amazon bestsellers The Divine Keys and now Feast and Famine. Awards include 10 Best Life Business Coaches and 10 Best Energy Healers in the Natural Nutmeg Readers polls of 2017 and 2019. Well, welcome, Robin. I'm so glad to have you on the show today and appreciate you taking your time to be here with me.
Yes, Jay, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you invited me.
So, well, why don't we start off? I like to always find out what what makes Robin Robin. What makes you um, who you are.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. So I spent 25 years in corporate America and nonprofit administration. I put my time in that world, and then I stood on my deck for almost a year every evening, asking the same question: How can I be of greater service to mankind? And what I came to realize when I did that is that I really committed to a life of divine service
Mm.
at that time, and so um, I also perhaps, I don't know, naively created a spiritual mantra for myself, which was bring it on.
Oh, wow.
And so that resulted in having to well, I experienced very some really cool mystical synchronistic events, very interesting working with the ascended masters, which are very high level spiritual beings in the non-physical world. But I also had to really dive deep into my own healing. And even though I was diving so deep, Jay, I really had could not get beyond my own addiction. And the reason why I couldn't heal my addiction to obsessive compulsive food disorder and bulimia was because I wasn't addressing the true problem, which was that I was suffering from my childhood traumas, teen traumas, and adult traumas.
Mm.
And so I was asked to write up this book, Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace, which really talks to the idea that the problem with addiction, the problem of addiction, I should
Yeah.
say, is that we're suffering, and then we choose vices to perpetuate addictive behaviors that help us to feel better about the suffering. So, in essence, the suffering is the problem and the vices are the symptoms. But traditional addiction recovery tries to work on the symptoms, in my opinion, now that I've done this work and studied it and wrote this book. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You can't get anywhere while you're still using, right?
Right.
Or still actively engaged in it. But it needs to go one step further, and that is to really understand what you were suffering about in the first place that you need to heal. And this suffering can go way back. For me, it actually even went back to past lives that I had to bring forth through hypnosis to heal. And then, especially, and in current life from childhood, teens, adult. We have patterns that come out of the trauma that you'll see over and over again in your life. A pattern is something that you'll notice, why does this keep happening to me? Right?
Right.
So for me, the pattern was humiliation. For some reason, I would always be put in a position to be humiliated. And
Mm.
that was what I was suffering over until the way I got over that. Well, before I say that, even including the bulimia was a way to self humiliate myself and not allow others to humiliate me. So if I took care of it myself, then I wouldn't have to worry about others. But then in the course of writing Feast and Famine, what I discovered, and it's such a simple concept around humiliation, when I realized that someone can only humiliate me if I give them the title of judge.
Right.
If I don't make them a judge in my life, they can't humiliate me. And so that's been a very interesting thing. And also because my pattern is humiliation, it took me quite a while to be able to actually even come on a show like this, right? For
Right.
fear of being
Oh,
humiliated,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But now that I don't have that fear, watch out, right? Because I have a lot to say. I've studied a long time. I'm very wise. If I must say so myself, but I am.
Well,
Really studied spirituality.
mhm,
I'm a mom, a daughter, a wife, a
right.
friend. I live in this world, and I'm grounded in the everyday world, but I'm a scholar of spirituality.
Wow.
And so I love to share that, but I was so afraid, Jay.
Mhm.
I was afraid of being vulnerable. And so my obstacle, me personally, was this fear that, I was going to be called out and then people were going to question, what did I know? And, who am I? And really, what was really perpetuating that fear of humiliation and not speaking about my work was the fact that I was an addict, right?
Mm,
And here
yeah.
I am as a spiritual teacher, a life coach, a writing coach, an author, highly regarded, winning all these awards, and I'm an addict myself.
Mm, yeah.
So until I hit rock bottom and went uh, into recovery, then I could actually, wrote Feast and Famine once
Mhm.
before. And the ending was, well, these teachings, I hope these teachings work for you. They didn't work for me. And I hope that you have a nice life. Thank you very much. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking, that's just not the ending that I think. And so until I could come into recovery by applying the teachings, I couldn't release the book.
right.
And so I came into recovery through the teachings and certainly other ways. I highly recommend that people follow um, the traditional addiction path to recovery, right?
Mhm.
Going to a group, working with a therapist. I've done all that too.
Right.
And also, energy healing, which is something that I'm very engaged in. And whatever you need, right? So it's we're very complex, mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and we need to be addressing all four.
Right.
So I guess that's what makes me unique,
Okay.
um, is that, I really lived this book for a long time, you
Right.
know, and when I started to write this book, I had one rule writing this book, and that is that I could never get mad at myself for what I didn't know before.
Yeah,
Right? Because I would
yeah,
look something up and I could easily say, why didn't you look this up 20 years ago? Like you wouldn't have spent the last 20 years. So for me, when in my bio it says decades, it was 4 decades, Jay.
wow,
40 years
yeah,
since I'm
well,
a teenager,
yeah,
right? But I could have been, so that was my one rule to write this book, that I couldn't belittle myself by looking back and saying, "Oh, if I only knew this then." But honestly, I feel like my whole life, and the same with everyone that's listening, has led me to this exact moment in time,
right. Yeah,
right?
it's
To just even be sitting here with you,
yeah,
right? If I hadn't done everything that I did, I wouldn't be prepared to have this conversation.
right. Well, and that's when I started this podcast, that same kind of feeling is, "Well, who am I that people are gonna listen to me? What have I got
Mhm.
to say?" So, I get smart people like you on to talk, and but again, it's that fear of what I don't know. I didn't know how to do this, you know, a year ago or
Yeah.
2 years ago, and that thing that holds us back is that fear of the things that we don't know that we don't know.
Oh,
Eh
and there is something to be said. So I was just talking to my 92-year-old mom before we got on, and she listened to an interview that I had done over the weekend, and she's like, "Wow, how do you know all that? You didn't know that. You never knew all that." And I said, "Oh, yes, I did. I didn't know it. I knew it theoretically,
Right.
but I didn't know it in my heart. I didn't it wasn't part of me." And now the teachings are I have become the teachings,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's the difference. And that's the difference. That's where the freedom comes in, I think, Jay. Like
Yeah.
when you feel comfortable that you can talk about it and not worry about what other people have to say, right? And every time I would be asked to speak in my corporate job, I would always have to say to myself, well, they wouldn't have asked me if they didn't think that I knew at least one
Right.
more thing than they do,
Yeah.
right?
Well
And a really wise teacher once said to me that when you're a speaker or you're the boss or you're a manager, supervisor, whatever you don't want to be 10 steps ahead of your people. You want to be one step over so that you can reach for their hand and take them with you.
mm,
If you're way out there thinking you're, Mr. or Mrs. Smarty Pants, right? And trying to be the smartest person versus being the person that's the most relatable, then you can't help others to succeed.
right.
And that's why I think knowing your materials removes the obstacle of ensuring that people understand what you're saying.
Mm.
So really know it, embrace it, know it. And in my just real quick, in my corporate days, I worked for the chairman of a Fortune 200 company
Oh, wow.
and his team.
Mhm.
And I used to think I would go in there, even I'd bring in a spreadsheet. I was a corporate controller. If there was one number I didn't know, that's the one that they would zero in on. And then I thought, "Oh my god, how did they know I didn't know?" But because it looked weird, right? It looked
Right.
wrong,
Right.
right? And so when we know what we're talking about, we when we really embrace what we know, then we can share things with others. And that's what I would encourage your listeners to do, is to really make sure that they really understand what they're sharing with others and what they're teaching, and uh, in all parts of their lives.
Right. Yeah, to
Be
understand that
confident.
that that niche that they know and be confident in it. That's helped
Mhm.
me myself in becoming more confident in doing these things as I've practiced and as I've talked to people. Um, I find it's easier to relate better and talk better. It's not just a script up here in front of me, although I do
Yeah,
have bullet points and questions and things that I wanna get to, but,
yeah.
you know
There's a wonderful teaching that I learned over the course of my journey. It's a path, and it's a path to success. And there's 6 elements: awareness,
Mhm,
commitment, mastery,
mhm,
service, leadership, and freedom. And so, it starts with awareness.
Hmm.
What do you know, what you don't know, and then commitment to learning what you don't know or sharing what you do know. Mastery, really, really honing in on it and becoming like someone that people can count on. So this is
Right.
really about work too, right? Everyday work. And then service is when you're really helping your clients or your peers. Leadership is when you embrace the teachings, when you become a leader of yourself at work or a
Yeah.
leader to others. But hopefully, if you're a leader to others, you're really a leader to yourself first,
Right.
right? And then freedom is what happens when you really embrace and share what you know graciously,
Yeah.
right? And freedom can be any form of abundance, right? It could be perhaps more vacation time or a better office. I don't know what it means, more money, right? But those things come. It's like if you remember, or you may still be working in corporate, but you never would get a promotion until you actually proved that you could do the new job, right?
Right.
At least that's how they used to do it when I was
Yeah.
there, because that was showing that you've gone through awareness, commitment, mastery, service, leadership, and then the freedom is the new position. But
Yeah.
you really
Right.
have to demonstrate service and leadership and mastery before you get that. And I have young kids, they're in corporate and they're like, wow, when is my promotion coming? And then I just keep walking them through that. Like,
Right.
where are you on this scale? Like, where do you believe that you are? And hopefully your bosses are recognizing that
Yeah.
as
Where
well.
yeah, the
Yeah.
effort and what are you learning that you can demonstrate
Hmm.
and all those things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
no, that's fantastic. That's one of the questions that kind of drove me through some of this is that I see it all the time now is that what other people think of you is none of your business, and so yeah, it really you just have to be the best you can be, learn the most you can, and the things you want to learn, and that really does take you up into the next level, whether it's
Mhm,
a next level job, or like next level of learning, next level of service, or um,
mhm,
all those things. It's the I've started to re-listen to Psycho Cybernetics, and they talk about success. Success is a achieving a goal. It's
mhm.
just your success is what you define it to be. It's not how much money you have, or although that could be a goal, but it's
Sure.
it's creating something or it's achieving something that you have created. It's your creative self. So,
Yes, and even if you're in an organization, you have the ability to express yourself
mhm,
and to create. My One of my favorite expressions is success is measured by impact,
right,
and impact is rewarded with abundance. So,
mm,
are you making an impact today? Right?
right,
That's when you know that you're being successful,
yeah.
in mind. So I know we've sort of gone in different ways. So I know we were here to talk about the book.
Well, yeah.
So
Let's now that we've kind of talked about history and where we all are
yeah.
now. Um, let's in this first 6 months of this year, we've
Mm,
had a change in lifestyle, but
yeah.
why do you think so many people are suffering through this and not able to really deal with the change?
Yeah, because we've hardly ever acknowledged that we're suffering. I
Right.
think that's the first thing. People don't know what suffering means and they don't know how to get out of it. Right? And
Mm,
so, in Feast and Famine, there's a something called the divine healing path. And so I'm gonna get to your question, but I
okay.
need to
No,
preface it with this. It's a four spiritual concepts that are to help people on this path of addiction. So as we said that it's really an addiction to suffering. So the first step on the path is that pain is inevitable.
Mhm.
right? So I shared earlier that we're mind, body, spirit, and emotion. So it's an integrated system. And so if something is bothering us on any one of those, it's going to impact the other three, right?
Mhm.
And beyond that, we don't live alone now, especially in COVID-19. There's a lot of coziness that maybe we're not so excited about. Right? People working from home and not being able to see their friends, and it's just potentially a big struggle. So pain is inevitable.
Right.
The next concept is that suffering is an option. And that's something that people don't know because, really, quite honestly, Jay, I think people believe that it's not just pain or suffering. They think it's pain and suffering, right? I
Right.
think you've heard people say that, pain and suffering. They
Right.
think they go together. So, as I said, pain is as inevitable as death and taxes.
Yeah.
Gonna happen, right? But suffering is an option. So, what do I mean by suffering? I think the simplest way to describe suffering is wallowing in your pain.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about as simple. I have a more complicated description as pain plus resistance to heal equals suffering. And so what do I mean by resistance to heal? A lot of times we have these traumas and these patterns that I talked about earlier, and we don't know what to do with them,
Right.
right? And so we'll have a couple of glasses of wine, or we'll watch an entire show on Netflix instead of being productive, right? We've all done it. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
saying I
Yeah.
don't do it. I do it all the time. I had to force myself to get up from the TV yesterday, um, because I kept watching one segment after the next, one
Mhm.
episode. And so suffering is an option. And as you progress on your spiritual path, even, suffering is no longer an option, because as a divine person, as someone who's trying to live heaven on earth, there's no suffering in heaven.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to live heaven on earth, then there's really no need to suffer here. So right now we're at the point where suffering is an option because we have growth that needs to happen through humanity in as individuals and in total. So that's number 2. So it's pain is inevitable, suffering is an option. The third is surrender is required. And what I mean by that is, if you have a problem, it's not, you just can't be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a thing here. I hope you don't see it." Um, that that, "Oh, I wish this would go away."
Right.
That's not surrender. Surrender is, "I am done with this. I do not ever want to do this again. I swear. I swear God, or I swear Goddess, or I swear Buddha, I swear whomever, I will never do this again." That's when you say that, and your divine source knows that, um, then they know that you're truly in surrender. And then the last one is, grace must be allowed. And what do I
Mm.
mean by grace? In this situation, I mean all the resources that are coming to you because you're in surrender. People calling you, "How you doing?" "Oh, good." "Oh, really? How can I help?" "Oh, I know this person." "Oh, look at that. I'm reading the newspaper and I see that there's a meeting just like down the street from my house."
Mm.
Or there's a course coming, right? Or I happen to look on Facebook and there's a wonderful post about healing from addiction, right? Like when you're in surrender, all the universe is, it's, I feel like, I want to almost say, the universe opens the shade on your potential to heal, right?
Right.
Because they know you're really serious this time. So why
Right.
would someone not be serious about it? Is because they're so used to their suffering, right? It's like part of who they are, because it is who we are. And sometimes we hold on to our suffering until we're actually ready to release it, because it protects us almost from having to look at our wounds that we're not ready to address yet. And
Okay.
so we'd rather be suffering like right out here. Look at Robin, she's the suffering queen, right? Versus, look at Robin, she's healing herself and coming forward in her full energy, right? And so
Mhm.
if you're not ready to do this, you may continue to choose to suffer. So I'm not sure. Your question was, why are so many people suffering? I believe so many people are suffering because, first of all, we're born into self love, right?
Mhm.
No question. This little baby, so beautiful, right? So
Right.
loving. Who doesn't love a baby, right? Except when they're crying or colicky, right? But there it is, right? And then maybe our parents, our siblings, our teachers, our friends, they're not very enlightened. And so they start saying things to us that are maybe bullying in nature or humiliating or condescending or whatever, or even abusive, and moves us in slowly into self loathing instead of self loathing. I mean, instead of self love.
Right.
And so if we don't get to heal our self-loathing, which not many people do as a child and a teenager, then we move into struggle, and then struggle turns into suffering. And then if you don't heal your suffering, then more than likely you're going to find some vice to make you feel better.
Right.
And until you can come into recovery from that vice, and then recovery from your suffering from doing your healing work, whatever you choose how to do that, whatever combinations of things that you use, that is the ultimate goal, is to return to self love,
Right.
right? Come to from where we started,
So we use
right?
addiction to dull the pain of the suffering we're
Yes,
choosing.
yes,
May not dull the pain, or it may dull the pain as well, but you're really trying to mask that suffering or enhance the
yeah.
suffering so the world will feel sorry for you, or
Could be,
yeah,
could be. And, you really don't feel better when you're masking it, right? You
right.
feel actually doubly suffering,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You don't feel better about having too much to drink, or, um, not for me, overeating,
Mhm.
and then purging. I mean, I certainly didn't feel better.
Right.
And it's funny in the book I dress, because people think, well, those people should be really thin, right?
Yeah.
Your body goes into starvation mode, and it holds every calorie you put in it, because it's in fear that
Gonna
you're gonna lose the calories.
yeah.
So it's not a weight loss program, as some people might ask me. I'm like, no, it's not even close. It's actually the opposite of that.
Right.
So I wouldn't recommend that as
That
a weight loss
that's not
program.
a recommended weight loss program.
No,
Okay.
not. Hmm.
Well, let's take a real quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about transferring suffering and addiction devices, and how you how you move past that, how you surrender,
Mhm.
and we'll get to those things right after these messages.
Some people are born smart or beautiful. I was born electric. My name is Michael Vane. The Elgin Corporation created me. And now they're trying to destroy me. I've got friends that can shoot lightning, create an EMP, create light. I'm getting more powerful every day. Which brings me to my question. How much electric am I going to get before I am no longer human?
My name is Alan Christofferson. You don't know me. Just another book in the library, my father would say, unopened and unread. You have no idea how far I've come or what I've lost. More important, you have no idea what I've found. I'm no one important or famous. No matter. It's better to be loved by one person who knows your soul than millions who don't even know your phone number. I have loved and been loved as deeply as a man can hope for, which makes me a lucky man. It also means that I have suffered. Life has taught me that in order to fly, you must first accept the possibility of falling. I don't know if anyone will ever read what I'm writing, but if you're holding this book, then you've found my story. That makes you my fellow sojourner. If you find something in my journey that will help you with yours, keep it. Some might call this a love story. Those without love will call it a travelogue. To me, it's one man's journey to find hope. There are things that happened to me that you might not believe. There were lessons learned that you might not be ready for. No matter. Accept or dismiss what you will. But let me warn you in advance, which is more than I got, that what you read won't be easy, but it's a story worth telling. It's the story of my walk.
Well, welcome back to Rebuilding. My guest is Robin Clare, and we're talking about addiction and suffering and pain. And we promised to talk about how or when do you get addicted to suffering, and then how do we translate that suffering into release and acceptance so that we can move through that and move on to the grace and healing our lives. So let's talk about how we translate. First, we started a little bit with addiction devices, but
Mhm.
why, besides the maybe trying to dampen the suffering, what are the reasons we have this addiction turning to vices? Is there you underst maybe this is not the best question, but why do we turn to vices because of the same pain and the suffering? Maybe that's a
Yeah,
better
yeah,
question.
yeah. It is a good question actually, because before the break we were talking about that, when you aren't able to heal your struggles, right, they turn into suffering and
Mhm,
struggles. Maybe that's not even a good enough word, but your trauma patterns, right?
mhm,
When you're unable to heal your trauma patterns, then it turns into suffering. And really honestly, with first of all, getting mental health is always had such a stigma to it,
right, yeah,
right? Right? We look at it like it's something terribly wrong with us, and that maybe because in the past they would throw us in the psycho institutes, right?
right,
And so I think people are better. I think even the insurance companies don't value it. Even for people that's not covered as much as it should be, they don't reimburse psychotherapists as much as they should be. So the whole concept of mental health doesn't get the the ben, the respect that it deserves,
yeah,
and therefore I think it stops people from going for help, because when we're talking about healing childhood trauma, teen trauma, adult trauma, that's some serious work.
right, yeah,
Right,
it is.
serious work. Like you're looking at things that have hurt you terribly, and you have to relive them almost in your work. But and I'm sounding like I'm trying to talk people out of it, but I'm trying to be honest about it.
Yeah,
And but the thing that happens is when you are able to release the trauma associated with it. So the memory doesn't go away, but it doesn't have the same sting. In fact, my teachers, I studied in India for a month at the Oneness University, and they used to say, when you remove the emotional charge. And
mm,
so I always envision, like, inside of me, there's a candle for each of these trauma points. And when I would remove the emotional charge, I'd be like I'd be blowing out the candles, right?
right,
And then, of course, the trauma is still in there, but it's not charged up. And as soon as so I haven't so in some people call that releasing the trauma,
mhm,
but it's a part of you. And so you want to have empathy for it. You want to integrate it into the rest of your life. You don't want to push it out of you. You want to
Right.
be able to look at it and love it as much as you love the more joyful parts of yourself, right?
Right.
And so I think that's where people get stuck is because they first of all don't know how to heal their trauma, and it's not easy to get to know what to do, and it's not easy to do the work itself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then to find someone who's highly qualified to help you to do that.
Then it
And
can
so
hurt.
I believe. Hmm?
It can hurt. It
It
I
hurts a lot.
yeah.
It hurts a lot. As someone who's done a lot of trauma healing work, it's incredible, but it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Because what happens, I guess, again, here we go, lifting the shade, right? When you lift the shade on your own life, then you're able to see things like you're going on a walk and maybe in suffering, you're like, oh God, this is so long. How long is this going to be? When am I going to be done? But when the suffering has been extinguished,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
When you're no longer suffering, you're like, "Oh, look at that chipmunk, look at that bunny," right? Look at the trees. Oh my God, they're so magnificent. It's like someone turned the light on of your life,
Right. Yeah.
right? And who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't want that joy of creative expression and being able to be the best friend, the best partner, right? The best person and the best citizen of this country by looking at things from your own place of healing.
Right.
So I think I answered your
I
question,
think
but if
so.
not, ask me again.
No, I think we did. I think we've
Okay.
kinda hit it both before the break and now. So, what when you talk about surrendering your suffering,
Mhm.
giving it
Yeah.
that blowing the candle out, um,
Yeah.
reducing that emotional charge, I think that's what I see myself most when I look back on those things that happened in my childhood, and I said, "You know what? I wouldn't be who I am now if I
Absolutely.
hadn't learned those things, so now I'm open to learning other things." So what's the process that someone could follow if maybe they haven't got a professional that can help them work through. I know we recommend that you work through with a professional. I would recommend
Yes.
that. I've seen that
Yes.
benefit people in my family.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
steps can you take to work through and be able to understand how to surrender to that
Well,
suffering?
I mean, ideally, yes, they're working with a professional, but also I would highly recommend them to begin to pray
Mhm.
or meditate, a and or meditate, right? And really go inside and begin to talk to that inner child in them or that person that's been hurt and say, how can I help you? What is it that you need to know? Right? What is
Mhm.
it that why are you so sad? Why are you so angry? And see if you can talk to that being as the mature person that you are today, right?
Okay.
Because I think a lot of times what happens is those parts of us that are hurt still think that we're that age.
Oh,
Right? They
yeah.
still think we're 6 or 7, or 14 or 18, but we're not. We're really mature adults now. And so that's getting to have a conversation with them. There are also, energy healers that do a lot of this work, the inner child work, it's what it's called.
Hmm.
Um, um Family constellations is another form of the work. So there are other people that are just really experts in this inner child work. And then you were saying that a lot of your audience is men, being out in nature, going fishing, sitting in a boat, going kayaking, taking a walk in nature and just talking to your younger self and saying, why are you still so upset? What is going on here? And allow yourself to be emotional, allow yourself to cry.
Mhm.
And yet, every part of me is saying, do it with someone who is trained in helping you. Because, as you know, Jay, when you're really hurt, right?
Mhm.
you know it hurts to bring this stuff up, and
Yeah.
so you want to be able to manage the pain that's coming up through the healing process, and people are trained to do that. I have a friend, Lois, who here in the Connecticut area that does breath work, which is a way of breathing through the
Hmm.
pain.
Hmm.
But I just don't know if you can do it yourself. I'm
Okay.
going to go out on a limb and say I don't think so. I don't think you can get to the true essence of
Mm.
where the source of the pain.
Okay.
So there's just so many different ways, and you know maybe if you're in a group, talking to your sponsor or talking to another member, seeing
Hmm.
what they did, how
Yeah.
they did it. But I think we have a lot of access to mental health
Yeah.
situations, I think, today.
So start the journey in
Mhm.
yourself
Mhm.
by seeking out someone that you can talk to, whether it's a close friend that you know you can be vulnerable with, that you can really talk
Yes.
about things with and know they're
Yes.
not going to judge you. They're not going to, um, you know, think poorly of you because you have this problems. That's a good start, and then move on to finding a professional that you're comfortable with, a counselor
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
even all the way up to a psychologist or whatever you need as you talk to these
Mhm.
people. You may find that you need different
Mhm.
paths
Mhm.
to really open that up.
Because I am a life coach, and I have a program that's called Stop Suffering and Start Living. But based upon the clients that come to me, I am always requiring them to be working with a trained psychotherapist or somebody
Mhm.
to really get to help them work through the trauma. I'm just good at recognizing what it is and helping them to create strategies to heal and to have a better life,
Okay.
right? As a life coach, but I'm not a trained psychotherapist. This month, in July, I'm actually going to become a designated recovery coach
Oh,
because
wow.
I felt like I needed that traditional day to day approach to recovery for my clients that even though I've gone through recovery, I went through recovery from a spiritual perspective.
Mhm.
And so I really want to understand what is the traditional approach because I think I should know that,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So you can offer those pathways as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, why don't we wrap this up with this final question? How can you allow grace and to heal your life? And what there's so many definitions of what grace is, the
Mhm.
pure Christian
Yeah.
definition, but I think this this um, idea of grace has such an umbrella effect of how you, no matter what your beliefs are, can allow grace into your life. So why don't you talk about how you allow grace to heal this pain and this suffering?
Okay. So now I'm going to get a little woo woo on you. So bear with. So, we are part of we are a part of and all of all universal energy, right?
Hmm.
And so we are as every single person is. I'm going to get a little religious now and say that we are each a divine spark of God.
Okay.
And so, or goddess, whatever you're into.
Right.
And so, because we are that, we have access to unlimited resources for our lives because the universe, in its very definition, is unlimited.
Hmm.
And so when we recognize that grace is all things known and unknown to us, right?
Right.
All goodness, all sometimes I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly because sometimes it seems like something bad is happening, but it's really not. It looks bad on the outside, but it's really just another way that you can heal, right?
Right.
Another good example, something that needs to be healed. And so, as soul beings having a human being experience, which could be a whole nother topic of a podcast, our soul is leading the way. And our
Mhm.
soul has a desired destiny in this lifetime. And it is filled with learnings, with ups and downs, and it's a journey, right? But when you open yourself up to knowing that you are this divine source within, right? The
Mhm.
kingdom of God resides within, right? Really taking that very seriously. Oh, it's in here, right? It's in me.
Right.
That's grace. When you begin to recognize that you are all part of all of this wonderfulness that's possible for you, for Mother Earth, for her inhabitants, for humanity, and you begin to know that, then that allows you to open up to all of the resources that are available to you. And that could include, services for healing your addiction, and people coming into your life, new friendships, new work, new whatever. When you're in alignment with the universal energies, then everything falls into place.
Yeah.
And so this idea of surrendering the first step is to come into acceptance that you have a problem,
Right.
right? And that you are suffering and that you have a secondary addiction, right? But then when you surrender that, powerfully surrender it, really be willing to give up the vice, and to then also do your healing work required for the suffering, then grace just flows into your life.
Mm.
And you see it, even today. I felt like almost like Snow White riding my bike, because first a bunny went in front of me, then a squirrel, then a groundhog, and then a couple of birds, and I'm like, "Get out of my way," but I was laughing. I'm like, "What are you guys trying to say to me?" And I knew it was really the energy of the universe talking to me, saying, "Oh, this is fun. Let's just throw these animals in front of her bike wheels as a joke." But I talked to all the animals as they went by. That's why I said I felt like Snow White. But you begin to live that way. You begin to recognize that we're all connected,
Mhm.
right? Everyone is connected. There's a sense of oneness between all of us, regardless of what we look like, what our religions are. We are just one with all of the divine source.
Yeah.
And that's grace,
Yeah.
right? Grace is the knowing of our oneness, and tapping into that so that you can have a life that's filled with joy, peace, love, and abundance.
Mm. Well put. Well put. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Um, when we were talking through the break about the tribe of kings, and one of the philosophies we have is the five kingdoms, and that innermost kingdom, the first kingdom, the most important kingdom, is you as a self-aware eternal life force, and
Mhm.
your relationship with your deity, your source, you can call it. That is where if you work on that and have that best relationship you can have with your source, it
Mhm.
affects your life in so many ways. And I see where you're saying the same thing,
Yeah.
different words,
Yes. My first book was about that. My first book is called Messiah Within,
mhm,
and about embracing your inner divinity. That when you live from that first core source, you actually become the Messiah of your own life,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Because you live from that place, and then whatever we would expect the Messiah to bring us, we're bringing it to ourselves from the inside out, right?
right,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Well, any parting thoughts you'd like to share as we wrap this show up?
Yeah,
we talked
I
about your
do. I
book a
just
little bit, and
Mhm. Yeah, so this is my current book, Feast and Famine:
okay,
Healing Addiction with Grace. And there's a little piece that I really love, and it really describes the divine healing path, the four spiritual concepts. And I like to end with this.
Okay.
So, this is a description of the divine healing path as shared with me from Sophia, who is known as Grace.
Hmm.
We talked a lot about Grace tonight. She's the divine universal mother. And I asked her, can you give me an example of what the four parts of Sophia's divine path to healing can look like in someone's life? And she replied, imagine sitting on the floor of a dark room, alone and in pain. This scene portrays what suffering feels like. The moment you find the courage to get up and look for the light switch, you are in surrender.
Mm.
When you turn on the light, you are filled with the light of grace. From here, you will find the door that leads you out of the dark room and back into self love and ultimately into your divinely inspired life. And
Wow.
so I just love that paragraph. It really sums up the entire book.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Mm,
fantastic. So,
thank you.
well, I guess how can people contact you? What's the best way
Mhm,
for them to contact you? And I'll put all this contact information on in the show notes as well. So if
mhm.
you don't have a chance to write it down, but yeah, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website is clarity.com. It's a play on my name and the
Hmm.
word. So it's CLARE hyphen ITY.com.
Okay.
And then my Instagram is clarity by Robin, and my Facebook is Clarity with Robin. And
Okay.
so my website is CLARE dash
.com.
ITY.com. And also, Jay, I have a 30-minute free consultation for the first time anybody connects with me. So
Oh,
they'll find that no matter what page they're on my website, they can't miss it. It's on every page.
okay.
And so I would really love to hear from folks to set up this meeting. And, we'll talk about ways that we could work together. And even if that doesn't turn into anything right there, I'm pretty confident that by the end of the 30 minutes, they'll walk away feeling better about themselves. So it's really a gift for me
Yeah.
to share with the world.
Well, that's a fantastic gift, and I appreciate you offering it to my audience,
Yeah.
and I guess my call to action for people listening is to take advantage of Claire's generosity and take it see if you have pain or you feel like you're suffering, or even if you just want to build your life better, build yourself up a little bit more. Get in touch
Mhm.
with Claire and set up this meeting. So again,
Great.
thank you so much, Claire, for taking the time with me today.
Hmm.
And I guess we'll call that a show. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Jay.
All right. As always, thank you for listening to Rebuilding. I hope that you have heard something today that will help you on your path to rebuilding your life. If something resonated, if you felt a call to action, please take that action and rebuild. Let me know what you think of today's show or any of my shows. You can leave comments at rebuilding.podbean.com or email at j@jwalter.com. I would love to hear from you. Comments, suggestions, and topics that you would like me to cover are always welcome. Remember, a dream written down with a deadline is a goal, and a goal achieved is a dream come true. Until next time, I am Jay Walter, and I am always rebuilding.